most obvious thing to say, and you may think it's beside the point, but the civil rights movement has to be understood in terms of civil rights. It has to be understood in terms of what it thought it was doing or what in retrospect it seemed to be doing. And in order to do that, we invented the concept of the color line, which of course Du Bois had talked about in 1903, but we used it as a way to pull together all of the different understandings of segregation and race and so forth, and decided that we could cover most of them with 6 dimensions like separation, subordination, denial of ordinary status, violence, rationalization, and I'm leaving one out, oops. But in order to understand the civil rights movement, you had to understand it in terms of its opposition to the color line. And so the title, Confronting the Color Line. Well, once we got that far, what do you do about it? Well, it turned out it falls out very nicely that each of the dimensions of the color line is a denial of a basic human capacity that's affirmed by democracy. Separation is denial of freedom of association. Subordination is a denial of rights of action. Violence is a denial of politics. Rationalization is a denial of political wisdom and so forth. So that you have, and the movement was trying to move from, by opposing the color line, to develop these democratic capacities that were inherent of us all. Now, in analyzing the situation in Chicago, we discovered that just like all of racial problems could be summarized in the 6 dimensions of the color line, just like all of the relevant human capacities could be summarized in terms of these 6 democratic virtues, so also the players in the field could be summarized in terms of 4 groups. At the beginning, we only thought there were 2, Daley and King. And King we saw as, and his followers, and much of the movement, as affirming the liberal democratic faith. He was an African-American preacher, but his preaching was as much about the American faith as it was about the Christian faith, and that's what we're trying to say in liberal democratic faith. And the movement was about, and a lot of other people were liberal democratic faith. And the movement's most conscious opposition was from what we call the Civic Credo group. Civic Credo tends to be business, chamber of commerce, don't rock the boat types, where they assume that just like the Poles had their own neighborhoods and don't anymore, just like the Italians had their own neighborhoods but don't anymore, they got integrated. So likewise, African Americans now have a ghetto and they'll get out of it. Wrong. That's not what's happening, but that's what your Civic Credo says. And your Civic Credo, this is Mayor Daley, that we have a bunch of ethnic groups, and the African Americans are just another ethnic group, and they'll make progress the same way. and that you're hurting the progress if you raise questions and you criticize the status quo, and you should be struck down by any means possible if you oppose the status quo. The third group that was there and is sometimes given the credit for all the opposition, but most days isn't that important. That's what we call racist realism. And this would be your Klan, your Nazis, a lot of other people that says black is black and white is white, and there's nothing we can do about it, and so just relax and get with it. And in some of the pronouncements, early Malcolm could be this way. Elijah Muhammad is that way. But they're the people who says nothing can be done. And the fourth group is, and it took us a while to see this, and probably the group that's more responsible than any other for the broken promise of the civil rights movement in Chicago, is what one scholars call the invisible religion. These are the people who are happy frequently in the suburbs with their 12-step programs and their yoga and their self-development, and they're happy with whatever's going on as long as it doesn't interfere with their getting to their Zumba class on time. Is that the name of it, Zumba?
Yeah, Zumba is one, yes.
Okay. And they just never came out of, well, they may have come out of their shells a little bit. You see, one of the things that was happening as the movement progressed in its opposition to the color line, that northern liberals, frequently white, who had supported the movement in its goals in the South, switched, and it happened almost overnight in 1966, and said, and took something closer to the civic credo position that it's not the same issue. Give it time, and the ethnic group
It'll
will
work out.
It'll work out.
Post-racial.
It'll work out. And so that's the basic parameters of the group. There's a few other things, but if you got the color line straight, if you got the democratic human capacity straight, and you got the four groups, that's our analysis, and you can. I've always meant to take that analysis and apply it to contemporary events. It works so far. I haven't seen any reason to revise it, but I haven't done it yet.